determined, work hard, be curious, and ensure that you have a lot of fun in the process.
Take more career risks. Get involved in relevant voluntary work earlier on in your career if you're not a natural networker. And also make sure you tell people how great you are and how great your work is, and make sure you celebrate yourself.
Well, the first one is to have belief in myself. The second one is to seek help. And I wish I'd sought help a lot earlier in my career. And the third one is to learn to take myself out of the equation and to realize that in business, it's not about you, it's about the business. And understanding how you can impact the business is the best way to achieve something for yourself.
Ask for help more, ask for guidance and insights from your peers, from the people around you, from people in the industry, because I think that really helps. So that's one. Secondly, I would tell my younger self to learn earlier on in my career how to communicate effectively, how to influence, and how to articulate yourself. I think that's a really key step to progression. And finally, I would say, remember what leadership is about. It's about becoming, in other people's eyes, to being perceived as a safe pair of hands, being a trusted advisor, and understanding that not talent alone will get you higher up in your career. It really is about talent, ability, and being a safe pair of hands.
I spent a lot of my childhood being desperate to fit in and wanting to blend in, wanting to not be seen, wanting to iron out my differences so that I looked like, sounded like, appeared like everyone else around me. And so it took me a long time to recognize that that wasn't useful. It wasn't interesting. It certainly wasn't fulfilling or empowering. And actually the reason I would and could be successful would be because of what differences I brought to the table that weren't already being met. If I could go back, that's the advice I would give my younger self. That don't be so desperate to fit in. Be comfortable being different. Own your differences and invest in your voice, your passions, your understand and invest in your own values and principles and live life and chart your career on your own terms. It's something I did and figured much later, because the beaten path wasn't a path that was created by anyone who looked like me. And so the beaten path isn't the path I can choose. Knowing that I'd have to forge my own path earlier would have served me well.
My advice to my younger self would be, don't be afraid. Sometimes you may not be expecting opportunities to come your way, but when they do, people above you think that you are really ready to take them on, so go for it. Secondly, bet on yourself. There is nobody out there who is going to carve a career better for yourself than you, so trust yourself and do what you think is right. And thirdly, speak your mind. Everyone has a voice, and everyone's voice needs to be heard, because we can learn so much from each other.
Speak up and learn that it is okay to speak up and ask questions. Everybody has questions. Nobody knows everything, so it is okay to speak up. I would tell myself to have more self-confidence and just be comfortable that I'm doing a good enough job, and somebody will tell me if I'm not. And then the third thing I would tell myself is be flexible, be willing to go out of my comfort zone and do things that are difficult, different, and treat them as a real learning opportunity, whether it's learning a new skill set or interacting with people that you wouldn't otherwise get the opportunity to do.
I would say, and these are now all very easy things to say, but they're much easier to say than to do. And I think the tips, I have to remember them every single day, regardless of the age. I think one is to be more confident. And it's very difficult to do, but I think starting out, especially having the confidence obviously needs to come from knowing the substance and having the substance, but then being able to deliver that substance is huge. 2 is don't be afraid to ask and to speak up and to ask for things, and ask questions and ask for help, because that's the other thing that I now find. Everybody's really willing to help, and I'm really willing to help if somebody would come up to me and ask. And it just didn't seem that obvious in the beginning. So I think the 3 tips, but the two I would say the most important ones would be, try and feel confident or project confidently and ask.
So I don't have 3 tips. I have 1 big tip, and that's really around stop worrying, because everything works out in the end. And, just be more confident, and just take it as and when things come. Do not worry about the next 3 steps or so. Just think about the now.
Jokingly, I'd say get lucky. But one does, to a great extent, create their own luck. I am going to go back to the fact that if one knows who they are and what they want out of life, out of work, so an alignment of motivations, answering the why, what gets me out of bed in the morning, and then is true to oneself in terms of living one's values, as one, treat others as you'd expect to be treated, hold oneself accountable to a higher standard of accountability than anybody else is able to hold you to, and learn, just intellectual curiosity, just keep on learning, developing, and motivating yourself around the nobler causes, right? It's not money, it is not power, it is learning, and I think that people who do those things, by the way, you know them, you'll see them a mile away, and equally you'll see people who are motivated by other things a mile away. And I just am attracted to the former, not the latter, and I hire people who are more the former than the latter.
I'm a firm believer in 360 feedback. I think it really does help you grow and understand your areas of development. And actually, the more you encourage and the more you allow psychological safety for your teams to be able to express themselves to you, you can understand areas that you may not have delivered your message across as beneficial as you wanted it to be. So I think that in order to appreciate feedback, digest it, and grow from it is really key.
From an Asian background, you grow up believing that it's all about your qualifications, all about your ability, and that matters. But that's not enough. It's how you project yourself within a business that really determines your success. And I had to learn that through my mistakes. And what I would encourage everyone, all of you out there to do, is to understand how you project yourself, how you can project yourself better, how you come across to other people. Do you come across as self-obsessed, or do you come across as a business person, as somebody who they can see as a future leader in their business?
So the best way, I think, of identifying the areas that you need to develop and improve are varied. So depending on where you work, the review process may or actually may not be helpful. You need a process that's balanced and forces a discussion around what you do well, but also what you do less well. And I think if it's an organisation that does that religiously and is done well, but also the feedback is from all levels, whether those are your peers at your level, those above you and those beneath you, then I think there is an opportunity for you to actually get some insight on where you can develop or what you do well that you need to continue to invest in. But outside of that, I think we all know when we've done something that isn't our best piece of work or is slightly lacking. And for me, I would take those opportunities and reach out to people and say, I'd really appreciate your insight in terms of how I could have done this better, because it's timely, it's live, you know it wasn't your best piece of work, so you may as well get the feedback and actually do something with it.
So I think the first part is recognizing that you're not perfect or complete, and nobody is. One of the most effective tools I had in my career that helped me really take my learning and development and growth, not just as something I talked about, but something I kind of consciously took ownership for, was the idea of a Johari's window, which was basically a 2x2 grid, so like a classic window where the top left panel is things I know about myself that others also know about me. That's the space in which most of us operate. But the one alongside that is things others know about me that I don't know about me. That's your blind spots. And until someone said that to me, I didn't even know that was a thing. And when I started to ask, so how do you find out things others know? You've got to ask, right? How do you perceive me? How did I come across? How did I leave you feeling when I made this statement or when I did this? There are so many things that we say or do, or an impression we leave, that we've got absolutely no idea of. And so that was a really important part of opening up my window to the things I was unaware of. Then the bottom left is things I know about myself that no one else knows. And the only way of opening up that part of the window is through vulnerability. It's through kind of authentically sharing, here's what makes me tick, here's why I do the things I do, here's how you'll get the best out of me. When you say this or do this, it undermines me or it gets in the way of me being my best self. And I think the most exciting one is the bottom right, things I don't know and no one else knows. That's your area of discovery. And the only way of exploring that is by putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, doing things you've never done before. Because how the hell are you supposed to know whether you're any good at it or not? It's kind of charting the shore of your potential that you don't know until you put yourself into uncomfortable, scary situations again and again and again until you figure out what that final quadrant looks like. So yeah, Johari's window.
So when I think about feedback, I think of it as being a gift in most cases. I've been so upset with some of the feedback that I've received over the years when I've worn a negative lens and I've looked at it in that way. We must also remember that feedback is not a one-way conversation. It's a two-way conversation, and we're not at school. We're all adults. So we should ask questions from a place of curiosity to try and understand more. And we also should have an internal conversation with ourselves and consider the intention of passing on feedback. And in most cases, it's passed on to make you better.
Well, I think directly, accept feedback directly from whomever it's coming. And then eventually one develops the experience and the wisdom to recognize where that feedback's coming from. Is it coming from a good place? And by understanding that, recognizing whether it's feedback that is that needs to be heeded, right? Advice that needs to be heeded, or in one ear out the other. And I think one just has to develop the ability to recognize good feedback from not so good feedback. And by the way, when I say good feedback, I mean constructive feedback. So I'm never actually looking for the great job. I'm looking for, here's what you could have done better.
Very important, because if you find a firm where your values and culture match those of the firm's, you are going to be in a position where you can deliver much better performance, and you will be rewarded both professionally and also financially. And this will be beneficial to not only you, but also the firm and wider society.
I think it is absolutely fundamental. The culture of an organization is absolutely fundamental. And I've gone into interviews, and within 30 seconds, I've realized that this organization is not for me. And it's quite tough when you've invested heavily in an organization to recognize that, but it is absolutely crucial.
I think the more senior you become, the more you're looking for that match within the organization around the purpose, because the more senior you become, you have more of an influence on the strategy of that company and the purpose of the company and the values that it has. So if there is a mismatch and you're trying to influence change and it's not happening, it's not getting through, you're going to feel very frustrated. So from my perspective, it's really, really key that my purpose and values, and this is around sustainability and how it's core to my values, it really fits in and matches with the strategy of the firm, with the purpose and values of the firm as well. Now, of course, when you're starting out in an organization, you now have actually that luxury to really dig deep into the purpose and values of the organization. That wasn't the case when I was starting off. Now it is. It's all out there. It's in the open. What purpose are they there to do? So you can pick and choose that. But of course, at the start of your career, you might not know exactly what your values are. And over time, you'll get to discover that as well. And it's that journey as you discover yourself and where your values, what are your most important values. Then you can also see what are the most important values of the companies around you. And then you can pick the right company for yourself.
In building a career and finding organisations who match your own cultures and values is really important. We all spend the vast majority of our day working, and so it's important that you are comfortable with the purpose values of the organisation that you're working for, and that your values are aligned. Otherwise, it makes you bringing yourself to work and actually doing the day job in a way that feels comfortable to you really, really difficult.
So in building for a career, trying to find a firm whose values match your own, I think is really important. But one of the difficulties is from the outside, how do you judge that? So ensure you do your homework on any firm that you want to approach and work for. One thing, though, I would be careful of is playing it safe. So don't use that as an excuse for not going for it. Or masking your lack of confidence.
Very important. However, it's probably a very far-fetched statement. I would say there are distinct cultures in firms, and I haven't worked in many, but from 3, I can see distinct characteristics, and they're somewhat different. So I do think it's very important to find one where you feel comfortable with, and that's closest to what you believe in. It's never going to be possible to find somewhere in a corporate setting that's going to be exactly matching what your thoughts and life understandings are. But the one that's that matches the best would be obviously it's hugely important. If you are in a place where you disagree with sort of the way the firm is going and how the culture is, you're never going to be happy. And if you're not happy, you're not going to be progressing. And if you are progressing but you are unhappy, you're not going to last long. And likewise, most likely people that you appreciate and you value and you become friends with and colleagues, they're not going to last there either, because they would most likely be on the same wavelengths with you. So I think it's hugely important that firm values and setups is as close as possible to what you aspire to on a personal level.
It is very important to find a firm that aligns with your values. However, it's not really firms, it's the people that inspire you at those firms. So sometimes you can be in an organisation where their values, their purpose matches your own, and you've done all your due diligence and you did your research, and this was the right firm for you. But unfortunately, you were in a team that the people around you didn't share your values. It's recognizing that, and it's making sure you understand that if that's being eroded, it's time for you to reassess and look to a different organization. So it is important, but I think it's the people and the teams that you work with.
At this stage in my career, I realise how important it is for me to work for an organisation where my values and their values are closely aligned or match. If my values were out of sync with the organisation, there's no way that I could thrive and grow. And also I'd be in conflict with myself on a very basic foundational level, which in itself can result in burnout, and it can be very, very exhausting as well. So this is what, I mean, to be honest with you, this is why I've stayed where I am for so many years.
I think it's awesome, isn't it? If you could find a company that really matches your values and your purpose. But I think it's rare. And so I think you could spend a lot of time waiting. For me, I've really picked people, managers, who match my values and my purpose, and or are willing to back and support and sponsor me. So whenever I've moved jobs and or whenever I've sought out roles, it's to work for someone who I believe will bring out the best in me. That's what I look for in a job, not the company, not the brand, not the organisation.